Welcome back, everybody, to What's Next. We're covering Miss Marvel, Season 1, Episode 5, the last episode right before the finale. And as always, I'm joined here today by the founder himself, Tyrone. What's up, my man? How you doing?
Hey, man. I mean, we're here with the expert Corey himself. I don't want to take any of this man's time. Let's just jump into it. I didn't even realize that we had one episode left. Blew my mind. I'm like you said before, the pacing was so good. It was perfect. You felt like, you were getting to know this character, fall in love with him, and all of a sudden, whoa, everything starts to wrap up real quick. Things are happening unexpected. But the big thing that we saw here in this episode was that Kamala saves her nanny, right? And that was exactly what you had predicted, my man. And that's why you guys got to make sure you're followed and subscribe to What's Next, because Corey's got all the takes, all the time. But what was your initial reaction to that scene?
Other than me wanting to tattoo "I told you so" on my forehead, I felt great about it, I think to your point, right, like I think the reason why I always thought that to me there's just these indications, right, that there was something that they weren't alluding to there, something that they were hiding. And I just felt like given the fact of the circumstance and what they've been laying out, it had to be Kamala, right? And when you really start thinking about the larger MCU, this is really our first tease into timelines again, right? And how they work, right? We've really established that going back in time does not affect what's happening in the future, right? And this happening is interesting to me, right? Because I still don't think they fully answered it, even though they might have alluded to it, right? Was this always the case? Did Kamala always come back, right? Or was it a little bit different, right? And I think that's something I want to know, because other than Loki, we haven't really gotten an indication on how these timelines work now that He Who Remains is gone, right? So was this really a part of like the sacred timeline aspect of it, or is this just happening now, right? So I think that's really...
Well, the other thing I'm curious about too is we haven't seen a lot of what if played out, right, in these worlds. And I almost feel like what if isn't necessarily like... It is different universes, right? Different dimensions. But I think it also could potentially be like, what if time did change and it does change nothing? And I think that's something, to your point, that we've seen a little bit in Loki. And also there's just all these different sort of time things going on. It's like, it's hard to explain, but it's almost like, for a lack of a better metaphor, it's like Loki's like football, and Miss Marvel is like soccer, and Doctor Strange is like lacrosse. They all are sports, right? But they just are slightly different. They have certain rules that you have to follow. And I think that's sort of where we are right now in this phase of Marvel. And I think Miss Marvel is a character that, and America Chavez is a character I think people aren't realizing fully quite yet, that these are very important characters, because where we're heading right now, we might be potentially, and this is a little bit of a theory, make sure you come over to the Circle Club to get our full predictions. I think we might be heading towards a space where the problem becomes so big that it becomes, we have to go back in time and try to, correct our errors that we made, right? And that's when a character like Miss Marvel and America Chavez will become very important.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, right? And I think I've talked about this specifically a lot. It's a little different than your prediction on what you think the big bad is. You're a big Doctor Doom guy, right? We've talked about that a lot. Yep. I'm a big Kang proponent, right? I think Kang is the perfect example of somebody that you can utilize as a big bad in this next saga, because of all of his variants, because of what he can do in jumping from different time periods, right? So when you start thinking about that point you make with America Chavez, right, and Kamala, right? America Chavez gives our heroes the ability to hop from these different universes, right? Kamala, right, like I've been talking about a lot of time, that bangle helps enhance her powers, and we don't really fully understand all the capabilities that she has. But what we do know is that this bangle has given her some type of ability to hop back into a different time period, right? So I think that bangle is important not only to help enhance Kamala's own powers to help open, in my opinion, doorways to these other dimensions. But in theory, it might be the key to allowing them to maneuver in these timelines and really go after somebody like a Kang, right? So I think you're going to need these different aspects and heroes that can really expand that box in what we can cover, right? I think America Chavez allows us to cover those different universes, go out to those different threats whenever we want to. I think Kamala is going to be the one that gives us this ability to hop between these dimensions, but also maybe hop between times at the end of the day. I think it's all going to be related to Kang specifically.
And I think you bring up a great point about the bracelet, right? Like, we talk about the power of this Noor, like we're still sort of trying to understand it. Here we see Kamran's mother. I apologize, I will get her name in a moment, but she is sort of vanished, or looks like she's vanquished, but then she says something at the end there, sort of similar to Aisha, right? And then now she's in Kamran's body. And I think the big thing I'm seeing a lot of people keep discussing is, who is the villain of this story? Is it Kamran? Is it his mother? Najma, that's her name, Najma. And is she the villain of this story? Is it him? Has she possessed him? Is she really gone? Or is her evil spirit within him? What do you think about that?
You know, I think it's pretty straightforward, right? I think you got to I always look at the consistencies within the MCU, right? I'm trying to pick apart things that they're doubling down on, other things that they've kind of repetitively done when it comes to the construct of a story. And I think all these MCU stories have to have some type of villain battle at the end, right? Whether it be big or small, whatever it might be, right? I think you add into a second element, when you look at Kamran's powers he was displaying there, right?
Yep.
It really shows similar powers to Kamala. He doesn't have the bangle, right? So I think it only further doubles down that point with the bangle enhancing Kamala's abilities. But what really I think is important is you can't really just have, anytime you have two characters doing similar things, it's always because it's a hero versus villain, right?
Right.
There's always kind of be that contrast between characters, right? So I think Kamran has shown himself that he is not trying to fight Kamala, right? Like he does not think the things that his mother is doing is the right stuff, right? So when you see his mother almost transfer herself into her son, I think what we saw at the end of the episode was a misdirection to believing that Kamran is seeking help, but it's really is his mother utilizing the relationship with Bruno to wiggle her way back to Kamala. And I think the important piece here to note is Kamran, I believe, I don't think they've really confirmed any of this, but Kamran, I believe, came to existence within this human world, right? I don't think he's been around when Aisha was around and Kamran's mother was around back in the day. And that plays right into what the reasoning behind Kamala having her powers is, right? Aisha got it a lot from the bangle, but because of this concoction of the human and jinn relationship of Aisha and her husband is what created this special concoction with Kamala, is what leads to Kamran having that powers and why his mother utilizes him to give her an ability to go after Kamala. And what's going to make this bigger for this last episode.
It's like if the X-Men have a baby with a human, it kind of creates this new species or person or a mutant or ability, and that's sort of what we're seeing, and that's why those two are closer in relationship than maybe Kamala and Aisha, because Aisha's from that different dimension, but these two they both have that same genetic makeup, right?
Yep, exactly how I'm describing it.
Yep, and so we see Kamran and Bruno here. Our boy Bruno, I mean, he couldn't even get his name right. I'm like, dang, show our boy Bruno some love. I'm curious of two quick things from you. One, do you think Bruno does end up going and leaving Kamala, goes off to college? They sort of imply here that they're dead. I think you and I both know that is not the case. But the DODC, talk to me a little bit about who they are, what we can expect, and what they are trying to attempt to do here.
Yeah, so a couple questions. I'll rip right into it right off the bat. I'll answer your second question first. There's no way these guys are dead, right? I think the visual example they gave too is Kamran was able to knock away the drone. The drone shot its rocket, but it hit in the lower tier. So I think there's going to be some way, obviously, that they're going to get out of that. So that one's pretty straightforward. I think the first question with Bruno, I think there's just this element to Kamala showing a real interest in a lot of the other male younger characters in the show, and really not recognizing Bruno for his kind of, the vibes we're getting is that Bruno probably has some feelings for Kamala, right? It's just the classic teen story. He's kind of afraid to admit it. They're friends, gets really jealous when she's showing attention to these other guys. And I think there's going to be something that happens in this last episode that really pushes Bruno away, especially when you start thinking about the Marvels that it's coming out, right? I believe that's going to be something that's such a higher entity. A guy like Bruno is not ready for that. So I think Bruno is going to go off, do his own thing, but he's going to be brought back in. I have my own theory on him potentially being a bad guy down the line. We'll get into theories on a different video, so stay tuned for that. But I think he's really going to go away and separate himself from this Kamala situation, just given the fact that he's getting involved in it too much. And then this brings in the DODC, right? DODC is clearly not afraid, given No Way Home, of going after these superheroes' friends and making them guilty by association. So when you start thinking about DODC and all these projects that we've seen, right? We know in She-Hulk, they're going to be a huge piece in She-Hulk. We've seen it in Shang-Chi a little bit with Abomination working in there, but he's really a part of the DODC. Doubling down on the Stark stuff being taken over in No Way Home from Happy and the misuse from it. Back to Far From Home and them using those drones that they confiscated from there. Going even farther back as Homecoming, right? And having that facility that Peter was stuck in, right? So they've clearly laid these elements to the DODC. And I think the reason for that is we're getting way more into these street level fighters, right? So when we're getting away from Iron Man and Cap, who are these big entities who have huge public approvals, right? And we've kind of gone past the Sokovia Accords, where the government is trying to get more control over these superheroes, more registration on them. Just in general, this is now their opportunity with Cap, with Iron Man gone, to kind of put those vice grip into these superheroes. And I think the reason for that is because you need to have this kind of minor entity going after these superheroes, throwing them off their path a little bit, letting them know they can't just do whatever they want, right? You can't just become a superhero and do whatever you want, but they'll never be the big reason why the superhero fails, right? It's just there to kind of misstep them, have them as that second entity that's a threat, but never really a good enough threat that's going to capture the superhero at the end of the day. So.
And one last quick moment before we head out of here is Nick Fury is not on Earth, right? And so they don't really have someone to kind of have those delegations and conversations back and forth with at this point. And besides, it's like a street level fighter. It's like, you're not going to go to Nick Fury for, the girl who's got glowing hands. It's like, okay, we've got plenty of other things to deal with other than that.
Prime example of that, before you finish off your statement, is literally Peter Parker in Homecoming. He kind of designates it to Happy, right? And even in Far From Home, he designates it to a Skrull, right? It's not even the real Nick Fury. So even Spider-Man, who we know is a huge guy, right? Nick Fury ain't even bothering with him.
So that's what that's what I was gonna say, is like, even someone like Spider-Man, we've seen Hawkeye, like some of these like lower level street fighters, he doesn't have time for that because there's a bigger threat going on. And so I think that's why, ultimately they have to come in and kind of make sure there's checks and balances with what's going on here. But all right, Corey, let me know. Anything else going on here?
No, hey guys, as always, right? Like I always say, subscribe to the channel, follow the socials, because especially with Marvel and these releases, we got new content basically every single week. And if you want to know what's next, there's two things that's coming up for you guys. The finale of Miss Marvel, but more importantly, the 4th edition of Thor Love and Thunder, right? My man and me are going to watch it tomorrow night, so expect a video coming maybe later this weekend, early next week for sure. We're going to be breaking it down, so stay tuned for what's next with us.
And if you want to check out our predictions for this finale and just where Marvel is heading, make sure you come over to the Circle Club and check out our videos there. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.